Life has a way of surprising us, just like this story. But before we dive into the next incredible journey, we want to hear from you. Tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Let's see how far this story reaches. And if you don't want to miss the next life-changing tale coming tomorrow, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't believe what's next, and you don't want to miss it. They were inseparable as kids. Now he finds her struggling to survive. Logan Hayes had walked through the doors of St. Vincent Hospital many times before, but today was different. The bright fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as he stepped inside, adjusting the cuff of his tailored suit. As the billionaire CEO of Hayes Tech, he was used to commanding attention whenever he entered a room. But today, he wasn't here for business. His mother had been admitted for observation, and he wanted to check in on her. What he didn't expect was to come face to face with Ava Mitchell, the girl he thought he had lost forever. She was standing at the nurse's station, flipping through a patient's chart, her brow furrowed in concentration. For a moment, Logan wasn't sure if he was seeing things. Ava Mitchell, his childhood best friend, the girl who used to beat him in every math competition, the one who dreamed of becoming a world-class doctor, the one who had disappeared from his life after high school. And now, here she was. But not as a doctor, as a nurse. Logan's brows pulled together as he watched her. This didn't make sense. Ava was supposed to be in an operating room, saving lives. She was supposed to be wearing a white coat, not blue scrubs. Something had gone wrong. As if sensing his stare, Ava looked up. The moment her eyes met his, she froze. "Logan?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. A slow smile spread across his lips. "Ava Mitchell," he said, shaking his head. "I never thought I'd see you here." She let out a soft, disbelieving laugh. "Neither did I." For a second, it was just like old times. But Logan wasn't laughing, because now that he was standing close, he could really see her. He noticed the exhaustion in her eyes, the dark circles beneath them, the way her shoulders slumped like the weight of the world rested on them. He saw the way she gripped her clipboard like it was the only thing holding her together. Something wasn't right. The Ava he knew had been unstoppable. She was the smartest person in every room. She had dreams bigger than the sky. She was supposed to change the world. So why was she here? Barely holding on? Logan didn't have answers yet, but one thing was certain. He wasn't leaving without them. They sat in the hospital cafeteria, 2 cups of coffee between them, the air thick with unspoken words. Logan had barely touched his drink, his focus locked on Ava. She looked different now, older, more tired. But beneath the exhaustion, he could still see glimpses of the brilliant girl he once knew. "How did this happen?" he finally asked, leaning forward. Ava let out a breath, her fingers tightening around her coffee cup. "It's a long story. I've got time." She gave him a small, tired smile, but there was no humor in it. "You remember how I wanted to go to med school?" "Of course," Logan said instantly. "You were meant to be a doctor." She nodded. "I thought so too. I got into a great program, but med school isn't cheap, and scholarships only covered so much. I worked multiple jobs, took out loans, and did everything I could to make it work." She paused, her voice quieter now. But it wasn't enough. Logan felt something tighten in his chest. "I tried, Logan," she continued. "For years I tried. I studied during my breaks, pulled double shifts to pay tuition, barely slept. But the debt kept piling up. I had to make a choice, keep sinking or find a way to stay afloat." She let out a soft, humorless laugh. "Turns out, drowning in debt is a lot scarier than giving up on a dream." Logan's jaw clenched. The Ava he knew never quit. She had been the kind of person who tackled every obstacle with sheer determination. But now, she sat across from him, a shadow of the girl who once dreamed of changing the world. "How much?" he asked. Ava blinked. "What? How much do you owe?" She shook her head. "It doesn't matter. It's done. It matters to me." She let out a tired sigh. "Over 200,000, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "And that's after years of payments." Logan sat back, his mind racing. This wasn't just unfair, it was wrong. The world had taken someone as brilliant as Ava and forced her to settle because of money. And he wasn't going to let that stand. Ava looked at him, eyes wary. "Logan," she said slowly, "whatever you're thinking, don't." But it was too late, because Logan Hayes had already made a decision, and nothing was going to stop him. That night, Logan couldn't shake the conversation with Ava. It played over and over in his mind, the exhaustion in her voice, the quiet defeat in her eyes. This was Ava Mitchell, the girl who had once dreamed of saving lives, the girl who had worked harder than anyone he had ever known. And now, because of money, because of a system that made it impossible for people like her to succeed, she was stuck. He wasn't going to let that happen. Sitting in his penthouse office, Logan pulled out his phone and dialed a familiar number. "Mr. Hayes," came the voice on the other end. "It's late. What can we do for you?" "I need you to pull a file for me," Logan said, his voice calm but firm. "Ava Mitchell. Find out exactly how much student debt she has. Every last cent." There was a pause. "Sir, are you sure?" "Do it. And when you have the number, I want it gone. Pay it off. Completely." Another pause. "All of it?" "Every penny." Logan exhaled, leaning back in his chair. "And that's not all. I want her med school applications reopened. If she still wants to be a doctor, she's going to get that chance. No more roadblocks, no more obstacles." The voice on the line hesitated. "Understood, sir. We'll get started immediately." Logan hung up and stared out the massive floor-to-ceiling windows of his office, the city lights sprawling beneath him. Ava had sacrificed everything for a dream that was stolen from her. But now he was going to give it back. The next evening, Ava was sitting in the hospital break room, rubbing her temples after another brutal shift. Her phone buzzed on the table. She almost ignored it until she saw the subject line of the email. "Student loan account balance, paid in full." Her breath caught. Hands shaking, she clicked on it. It wasn't just a payment. It was everything. Every loan, every cent of debt she had carried for years, gone. Her heart pounded. This couldn't be real. Who? How? Then another email popped up. "Hayes Medical Foundation, full scholarship approved." Her vision blurred as tears filled her eyes. She couldn't breathe. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. Then her phone buzzed again. A new message. "Logan Hayes, dinner tomorrow. We need to talk." Ava covered her mouth, a quiet sob escaping, because deep down, she already knew. Logan had done this, and tomorrow, she was going to find out why. Ava sat at the rooftop restaurant, the city lights of New York stretching endlessly behind her. She had barely touched her water, her hands gripping the glass as if it were the only thing keeping her steady. Across from her, Logan sat casually, arms resting on the table, his expression unreadable. She took a slow, shaky breath. "Tell me the truth," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Was it you?" Logan tilted his head slightly. "Was what me?" Ava let out a frustrated laugh, shaking her head. "Don't do that. My student loans, my med school application, it was you, wasn't it?" For a moment, Logan said nothing. Then he leaned forward, his piercing gaze locking onto hers. "Yeah," he said simply. The air between them shifted. Hearing him say it out loud made it real. Ava's breath hitched, her emotions a tangled mess of disbelief, gratitude, and something deeper, something she couldn't quite name. "Logan, She swallowed hard. "I can't accept this." His eyes narrowed. "Why not?" She let out a sharp exhale, running a hand through her hair. "Because it's too much. Med school isn't cheap, and you just..." She gestured helplessly. "Why would you do this for me?" Logan's jaw tensed. "Because you were never supposed to give up." Her throat tightened. "You were the smartest person I knew," he continued, his voice softer now. "You were supposed to change lives, but you got stuck because life threw obstacles at you that you couldn't fight alone. And that's not fair." He leaned in slightly. "If I have the power to remove those obstacles, I will." Ava blinked rapidly, trying to hold back the flood of emotions threatening to break through. She had spent so long fighting, so long struggling just to keep her head above water. And now, for the first time in years, she could breathe. "You always were dramatic," she said, forcing a weak smile. Logan smirked. "And you always were too stubborn." She looked down at her hands, her heart pounding. "I don't know how to repay you for this." Logan's voice softened. "Just promise me one thing." She met his gaze, her eyes shining. "Anything. Become the doctor you were always meant to be." A tear slipped down her cheek. Because, for the first time in forever, that dream wasn't impossible anymore. The crowd erupted in applause as Dr. Ava Mitchell stepped up to the podium, adjusting her white coat. Cameras flashed, reporters leaned in, and dozens of medical professionals stood proudly behind her. The moment felt surreal. 5 years ago, she had been drowning, buried under debt, forced to abandon her dream. Now she was standing in front of St. Vincent's brand new pediatric wing, a facility she had fought to bring to life. And sitting in the front row, watching with that same familiar smirk, was Logan Hayes. She took a deep breath, gripping the edges of the podium. 5 years ago, she began, her voice steady but thick with emotion. I thought my dream was over. I thought I had to settle, that life had closed a door I would never get through. She paused, scanning the audience. But someone believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. Her eyes met Logan's for a brief moment, and she saw the knowing glint in his gaze. Because of that chance, because of that faith, I stand before you today, not just as a doctor, but as someone who now gets to change lives, just like mine was changed. The applause that followed was deafening. With a deep breath, Ava turned to the oversized ribbon stretched across the hospital entrance. The St. Vincent Pediatric Wing was about to officially open. With one swift motion, she lifted the ceremonial scissors and sliced through the fabric. A new chapter had begun. As the doors swung open and families poured inside, Logan made his way toward her. She crossed her arms, smirking. So, she said playfully, still think I was the smartest person you ever knew? Logan chuckled, shaking his head. I never doubted it for a second. Ava exhaled, the weight of the last 5 years settling in her chest. I still don't know how to thank you for all of this. Logan's smirk softened. You just did. Ava frowned. What do you mean? He gestured toward the bustling hospital behind them. You took an opportunity and turned it into something bigger than yourself. You're saving lives now. That's more than enough of a thank you. Her throat tightened. He had changed her life, but she had made it worth something. She nudged him lightly. You know, I probably owe you dinner or something. Logan smirked. I was just about to say the same thing. She laughed. Fine, but I'm picking the place this time. As they walked away from the crowd, Ava glanced back at the hospital. Her hospital. Her dream wasn't just alive. It was thriving. And it all started with one person who refused to let her give up. Some dreams fade, but others just need a second chance. Ava's journey proves that sometimes the right person at the right moment can change everything. But now, we want to hear from you. Have you ever had a dream you had to put on hold? Have obstacles ever forced you to take a different path? Maybe you fought your way back, or maybe you're still trying. Tell us in the comments, what's your story? And what do you think about Logan's decision? Would you have done the same for someone you cared about? Was it too much, or was it exactly what she needed? Your thoughts matter, and we want this to be a space where stories like Ava's can inspire others. So, don't just watch. Be part of the conversation. Drop a comment below and let's talk. And if you want to see more stories like this, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. You never know when the next story might be the one that inspires you.